Hey everybody, this is Jennifer Schaus, and we are coming to you live today from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us in our Webinar Wednesday series. Every Wednesday, we cover the top 40 government contractors, and we go sequentially from the contractor with the highest revenue down to the lowest. Lowest, not necessarily an accurate term, is once we get to the profile of number 40, I believe it's GlaxoSmithKline, so we're still talking millions of dollars, but just in the interest of time and cost, we are only covering 40. So a quick blurb about our webinars. They are recorded and they're all complimentary. You can find over 600 of our government contracting webinars on our YouTube channel. We encourage you to follow our YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you anything except about 5 seconds of your time using the link that you see here on your screen, and that will alert you when today's webinar is uploaded, as well as any other webinars that we are doing that are either scheduled or unscheduled. So you'll automatically get an alert. It'll take you over to the link. You can watch the recording or listen to it. If you're just looking for the PowerPoint, you can hop over to slideshare.net. It's also a free site. You can log in with your LinkedIn credentials and download the PowerPoint. Our PowerPoints obviously have a lot of links in them, and you'll find over 600 of the PowerPoints, the corresponding PowerPoints there as well. Okay, a little bit about us. We are based in downtown DC, where today it's pretty hot and humid, and we work with established revenue-generating government contractors. Some of our services are listed here, which do include some market intelligence reports, assistance with contract vehicles, primarily GSA schedule, as well as Library of Congress FedLink, and some other services that you see here. We also put on events, webinars, and conferences. We had an event on Monday over at the Kennedy Center where we had almost 400 people there for a networking with about 8 exactly, federal government agencies and departments. As I mentioned, we do have a lot of webinars out there, so if you're interested in selling to federal contractors, so typically the banks, the law firms, insurance companies, payroll benefits firms, we do have a variety of advertising options. We're running a special in July, which is a buy one, get one, and that goes for any of our services. If you're interested in that, just send us an email to the hello@jenniferschaus.com. We'll send you our media kit, and we can help you reach federal government contractors. Some webinars that are not included in this specific series that are happening soon. Less than a month away, we've got a 2-part series that we're doing with our friends over at the VA. Their small business office has some great resources on their website for government contractors, and so we're going to be teaching 2 classes. It's a part 1 and part 2 on GSA schedules. They are 2 different webinars. They're both going to be held on Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern, August 17th, August 24th. Those links are also on our website under the event tab, even though these are webinars and not in person. If you have access to these slides, which again, you can get through SlideShare later today, these links can be found there as well, but they're also, like I said, on our website. We are then doing a webinar after those 2 on August 29th, which is a Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern with the SBA. The topic is going to be subcontracting opportunities within the VA. So a little confusing. We're doing a webinar on GSA schedules with the VA. We're doing a webinar on VA subcontracting opportunities with the SBA. There will not be a test on that later. Some other classes that we've got coming up with our friends over at the Virginia PTAC, which is now the Apex Accelerator. A little bit in the distant future is February 15th. So that's obviously next year, but next month, the same exact class. These are both at 12 noon, and they usually last about 2 hours. They do include Q&A and just some marketing basics for federal contractors. If you're thinking about getting onto the GSA schedule, we've also got another class coming up in September if you can't make the August ones, and that will also be at noon, 2 hours, also with the Virginia PTAC Apex Accelerator. Those links are also on our website under the event section. For any companies that are looking to get onto the GSA Oasis Plus contract vehicle, we do have support services there. Clock has been ticking on that, so you're starting to kind of lose some time. Send us an email if you do want help with that. Okay, the reason our webinars are complimentary is because we've got some great sponsors that help absorb the cost and allow us to put these on for as a complimentary service to contractors. So we want to thank our friends at GovEvents. They're the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. You can find all of our webinars and our events on govevents.com, as well as our recordings from our past 600 webinars. We also want to thank Tom Johnson and his team at Set Aside Alert. That's the go-to publication for contracting opportunities for small, women-owned, veteran-owned, hub zone, and 8A firms. Visit setasidealert.com for more information. The Fairfax Economic Development Authority has an online calendar of events and webinars, and we want to thank them for posting our events and webinars on their calendar. Okay, the Virginia PTAC, which is also now going to be called Apex Accelerators, and that's across the country. So they are located over at the George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, and they offer free one-on-one counseling to established government contracting firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. If you're interested in learning more, use the links provided to explore services, review some homework recommendations, register for live training, and find useful links to agencies and other self-directed learning. Online resources and group trainings are free with no restriction on business location. One-on-one counseling is, however, limited to eligible client companies. The Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce has a monthly government contracting council, which includes meetings for networking. You can learn about upcoming events and federal contracting opportunities and help shape programming. The meetings take place the fourth Tuesday of each month, so that is, looks like, I think that's actually next week on Tuesday, July 25th, for an hour. It's an online Zoom meeting. If you've got questions or want to participate, you can email Alicia Field, and her email is listed there at the bottom of your screen. FBC is the Federal Business Council. FBC is your virtual and in-person event platform. Events are the ultimate engagement channel to bring government and industry together. 68% of government personnel report that they attend more than one event each year. FBC has worked with government and industry for 45 plus years to create gatherings where ideas are shared and to help government achieve its goals. This includes agency industry days, cybersecurity symposiums, tech expos, and offsite meetings. FBC provides full lifecycle meeting planning and event management. With over 5,000 meetings under their belt, FBC has the experience, systems, and personnel to make your next event exceptional. Learn more at fbcinc.com. Okay, BidSpeed. Our friends at BidSpeed were also at our event on Monday night as a sponsor, so we want to thank them. Do you want help winning federal government contracts? BidSpeed helps and you win. Find opportunities from federal, state, local, and educational sector in the U.S. BidSpeed helps you find teaming partners, incumbent point of contact, expiring contracts, and can provide you with compliance matrix and proposal templates. BidSpeed is also an official partner of the SBA 7J Management and Technical Assistance Program. You can get started today at fedbidspeed.com. GovSpend and FedMine, as we mentioned, are the platform that provide the data for our webinars this year, as well as in the past. So we want to thank Archiza Meehan, who also was one of our sponsors on Monday night. The GovSpend FedMine platform is the leading source of data, analytics, and insight for government contractors. They integrate data from 18 federal data sources and sets and create a single database that places the key data points at your fingertips. The platform provides contract opportunities within thousands of entities at the federal, state, local, and educational level. GovSpend and FedMine solution empowers teams to make smarter decisions. And again, we want to thank them for providing the data in today's webinar, as well as many of our webinars in the past. NCMA, this is the National Contract Management Association. They have their annual big meeting, which is the World Congress. It runs for 3 days in the very, very fun city of Nashville, Tennessee. I encourage you to check it out. It looks like it will be a great event. You've got some valuable opportunities there for not only networking, but learning. And you can pick up some continuing education credits as well. We encourage you to use the link that's here on your screen, which will take you to the registration page. And that is obviously coming up soon, so don't miss it. I highly encourage you to go to the NCMA World Congress event. Okay, that is it for our sponsors. Now we're going to dig into the actual series and the schedule that we've got. Again, today's webinar is recorded. It is complimentary. The PowerPoint is over on slideshare.net. If you take 3 seconds to subscribe to our YouTube channel, there's no cost to you, and you'll be alerted when today's webinar is uploaded there, as well as any other webinars that we've got that are either on our schedule or not, and you'll have free access to those. Okay, so where we are today, everything in red we have completed already. You can find those recordings on YouTube or just on our website under the top 40 section. We skipped over the week of July 4th, but today we're covering ADS Tactical. We'll conclude then on Wednesday, November 15th with GlaxoSmithKline. We're assuming that most people are on the line as small businesses who are looking to subcontract with these larger businesses. If that's in fact the case, then you want to pay attention now. So being a subcontractor comes with some rules and regulations, both for the government, and the contractors should be cognizant of these too. So you should be aware of the FAR and the DFARS. The FAR are going to be the overreaching all-encompassing rules and regulations for all of government, and then the DFARS is specific to defense contracting. So there are some rules and policies around that. We've covered the FAR in 2020, and so if you click on the link there, that'll take you to the webinar on FAR Part 44, which you should be well aware of. And particularly for today's webinar, because the company that we're profiling has most of their contracts on the defense side, you should also then be aware of the DFARS, which is the equivalent to the FAR Part 44, but specific to defense contractors and defense contracting. Some other webinars that we did on subcontracting, we kicked off this series at the beginning of February with an extensive webinar on subcontracting, starting kind of sequentially from market research all the way through to legal considerations, pricing, and compliance. So more or less the full life cycle. That's 6 different sessions. They are on our YouTube channel. You can also navigate to them through our website. The year before that, so 2022, we covered subcontracting within all 15 of the federal departments. So we looked at the top vendors and looked at opportunities to subcontract with them. And then more on the tactical and strategic side, over the last several years, we've amassed over 30 webinars on those various topics. So all about, anything from the sales, the strategy, and just different ways to work with large businesses, whether it's as teaming partners, joint venture, mentor protege. All of those topics are covered in those 34 webinars. So you've got the links there. Again, the links are going to be found either through or primarily by going over to the SlideShare site. Some best practices if you are pursuing subcontracting, whether it's related to today's prime or anyone else that's either on our list or not. Just in general, you want to define what it is your business does and what do you do well. And be known for that. If your company is providing landscaping services, be known as just the best landscaping services. If your brother-in-law has joined the company and he's really good at IT, then perhaps he should consider a different company, because those two are really not going to go together. So focus on one thing and do it really, really well. Second, you want to identify opportunities where you are bringing something to the table. So there's going to be thousands of small businesses reaching out to these large businesses. You need to do something that's going to set yourself aside. And just because you're a small business or just because you've checked a box for women-owned, veteran-owned, or HUBZone or 8A isn't going to make you stand out, because there's hundreds of thousands of companies just with those same check boxes. So what are you bringing to the table? Is it a superior skill set? Do you have a lower price? Do you have past performance in the agency where you currently are seeing an RFP that you can do 80% of the work, but perhaps this large business can help you with the missing 20%? So make sure that you stand out. Use all of the information that's out there that's public, and that's what makes this market so unique, is leveraging the data that you can find on SAM.gov, FPDS, or any of the paid data aggregators that make it a little bit easier to navigate and extract data, to make it easier for you to navigate and use data to plot out a strategy. You also then want to spend some time on the company website. So whether it's signing up for their newsletter, looking at the events that they're attending, also ensuring that you are staying abreast of any news alerts related to the company. So that's going to be usually Google, if that's your main search engine. Signing up for the alerts. So anytime the company shows up in the news, are they going bankrupt? Has their stock price tripled or declined? Have they purchased another company? Have they been purchased by another company? Have they spun off their government contracting division? Is there a new CEO? Is there a scandal? Have they had a data breach? These sort of things you should be aware of if you are going to be working with a company, whether it's as a subcontractor, a partner, a JV, mentor protege, whatever it is. So be well aware of who it is you're working with, and there's so much data that's out there that allows you to do this without really spending a dime. It's really just your time. Your capability statement should also be customized. So you should have your bland kind of vanilla capability statement, which gives the general company overview. But when you're ready to start talking to these companies, again, you should have a specific opportunity in mind, meaning a solicitation that has a solicitation number attached to it. And then your capability statement should speak to that specific opportunity, as well as whatever it is you're bringing to the table. So make it very, very custom. That will show that you've done your homework and that you're well aware of the opportunity, and you've sleuthed this as much as possible. Once you've got all of this, all of your kind of ducks in the row, number 6 then is, as I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, is then spending more time on the company website, registering for their newsletter. What events are they going to? Who are the small business liaison officers on LinkedIn? Who are the program managers, who are really the ones that are in charge of the programs and calling the shots, and sometimes involved in setting the budget and that sort of thing. The SBLOs are going to help you get to those program managers, but the SBLOs are not there to do your homework. And small business liaison officers are really just, if you've tried to call the program manager and email him or her a couple times and you haven't gotten through, if you have done your homework, then reach out to the SBLO, give them the solicitation number, send them your customized capability statement, give them the name of the program manager that you're trying to track down. Sometimes you may not know it, but again, make sure that you have all of your homework ready to present to the program manager. Don't ask these SBLOs to do your homework for you, because they've got hundreds of thousands of companies that look just like you that are trying to do the same thing. So most of your time in government contracting should really be spent on the data and the strategy and understanding the opportunities to ensure that you in fact do qualify for them. Okay, today we're covering number 23, which is ABS Technical, Atlantic Diving Supply. And here's some basic info. They're privately held companies, so we're not going to have any stock price for them, but here's a link to their website. And as you can tell, just by the company name, Tactical, they're, to give you some indication, they're selling to primarily Department of Defense, and it's primarily going to be product, not services. If you want to register to be a supplier for ADS, they've got a link there on their portal. It looks like you need to actually call them, have a sales rep assigned to you, and then you'll plug in a code then to register. DCAA profile, here they are. They're down in Virginia Beach, so not too far from Washington, D.C. For-profit business, and they've got, I think, roughly around 10,000 employees. Here's some LinkedIn information. I'm sorry, almost 1,000 employees, so a little bit smaller than what I thought. So equipment is primarily what they do. You can even just tell by the image there on their LinkedIn profile of primarily who they're going to be working with. So this is really not going to be a ton of surprises in today's webinar. Ryan is the CEO. I don't think we have a last name, and I'm not sure we pulled it from the website. He's a Naval Academy grad, and looks like he has worked with the company for quite some time. Okay, here are some BD folks at the company. We looked for SBLOs and could not find them, but as I mentioned, I think it looks like the entry point in is through by calling their main number, asking for the sales rep to then, I guess you get a code or something to then become a supplier. These folks may or may not be involved in that, but we did a little bit of homework to try to guide you in the right direction. What they're doing here on the civilian side, although not insignificant, is not the bulk of their business. But as you can see, it's a little sporadic, and they've got some dollars kind of in different departments and agencies, which in a way is good. So they're somewhat diversified here on this civilian side. It's, you know, and they still are doing a decent amount. If you look at the totals, so the gray bar there at the bottom, they peak primarily in fiscal year 21 and kind of declining since. We're not sure where they're going to end up there in 2023, but we are closing in. So my guess is, unless there's, you know, a major contract that's pending, which obviously is very, very possible, it looks like the bulk of their business was, again, in fiscal year 2021. I believe that they were providing a lot of PPE equipment because they were already listed on some contract vehicles. They were already known as being a supplier of products to the government. And so I think they picked up some supplies and materials that they could resell to the government or as a dealer to the government for during the pandemic. So the other thing here to note is that DOJ, Department of Justice, and DHS both peaked in fiscal year 2021, roughly around, both of them, 25 million, giving a total of 50 million if you lump those two together, which makes the bulk of the total for 2021. State Department also seems to be a decent customer of theirs that peaked also in 2021, but has since been declining. But if you're just looking at, and again, that's probably due to COVID, but the numbers perhaps could be kind of steady around, you know, 5 to 7 million for them at state. Looks like they're kind of on track there. No major decline there in the current fiscal year, with just a month and a half or so left. Justice Department, as you can see right above that, is half of what they did in 2022. And then if you bump down to DHS, again, they peaked in 2021, but maybe they'll level off, you know, somewhere between the 13 and 17 million, which maybe are just more of their standard numbers. The totals, as I mentioned, peaked in 2021 and will probably level off there and probably stay in the 30 to 40 range for 2023. Not sure what'll happen in 2024. So those are in the millions, decent numbers there, but defense is really where it's at for ADS Tactical. And if we look at this, DLA, no surprise, Defense Logistics Agency, so they're, you know, the bulk of the purchases at DLA, and they represent the bulk of the purchases within Department of Defense for actual products. Slight decline in 2021, which is Obviously very opposite from what we saw from the civilian side, but roughly probably safe to say that between 2 and 3 million is kind of, billion is where they are averaging on the defense side. So obviously much bigger numbers than what we saw on civilian, but fairly steady on the totals. So not a lot of peaks and valleys that we saw there on the civilian side. Navy appears to be kind of up and down. If you look at those numbers, 27 million or 27 billion in 2019, dropping down to 11.2, and then inching up there at 11.5, gaining some traction then back in 2022, but not looking great there in 2023 unless there's a very, very large purchase. Also keep in mind, Department of Defense is 3 months behind in reporting numbers. So there could be some dollars that have yet to be posted here. So just keep that in mind and be aware. Also, the Army appears to be simply just on a very steady decline. And if you look at those numbers, going from 43 down to 27, down to 10, inching up there at 11, but not looking great here for 2023. Same scenario though as Navy. There could be some large purchases that will, enhance these numbers there for fiscal year 2023. And a lot of the purchases end up happening in Q4, so we won't even see those numbers until October, November, December of this upcoming fiscal year. Air Force is interesting though, and this is one that appears to be growing at an interesting pace. I'm not sure exactly what the Air Force is purchasing. You'd have to dig into the numbers a little bit further, but going from 31.7 up to 33 is a nice increase, steady. It's not skyrocketing. 2021, a nice jump, and then another nice jump in 2022. Not sure what's happening here in 2023, so that would be a interesting number to look at once we get into October, November, December, and see what the total numbers are there for the Air Force. But that's really the outlier there in these numbers, in these departments. DLA again is really you can just see by just visually looking at the chart here that they primarily are. The bulk of the business again is with DLA. Growth in 2020, a slight decline in 2021, but not anything significant. Growing a little bit in 2022 from the previous fiscal year, and I imagine that 2023 will probably end up somewhere around 2 point something. The Department of Defense, that last line is going to be the OSD, so more or less we'll say the headquarters. And just interesting numbers here. Again, Air Force and DLA are the interesting ones, at least to me, to look at. When we look at the independent agencies, we're going to see some numbers here with GSA, which are also interesting because they come in with a bang in 2019, and then they basically cut those revenues in half. They lost half of the revenue. They get a little bit of traction again in 2021, probably because of COVID. Lose a little bit in 2022 and 2023. I don't know, if I was betting, I'd say they probably end up close to where they were last fiscal year. The totals are more or less mirroring that at the bottom. Social Security Administration, look like they purchased a chunk of something back in 2020. And a couple other kind of spot purchases here and there with NASA and BBG, which is the Agency for Global Media. And let's go ahead and move on to the top. NAICS again, still here, no surprises. They are a equipment supplier and manufacturing, so that's where you're going to see the big numbers. Huge decline there from 2019. I'm sorry, huge difference there in 2019 on services versus the miscellaneous manufacturing, as well as 2020. So that's the orange and the purple. The red sees a small decline, which is 2021. And again, these are just declines based on the two different NAICS codes that we're looking at. And the next slide is going to be a little bit probably easier to understand. 2022, the two NAICS codes are kind of on par with each other and not a huge difference. But when we look at the numbers here, it probably makes a little bit more sense. So again, we're looking at the top two rows where the bulk of the business is. They've also got other NAICS codes that that their products have been purchased under. And just keep in mind that different, I'll say even different individuals within the government are going to use different NAICS codes when they're making purchases. So somebody at DLA that's purchasing medical equipment may put the solicitation under 423850, where somebody at NIH may put it under 339113 for the same exact product. So these are obviously objective, but not objective. So just keep in mind it could be the same exact product. It just depends on how it kind of trickled down into that solicitation. The surgical appliances and supplies, you obviously see some decent numbers there. I'm going to assume the bulk of those are, especially in 2021 and 2020, were related to COVID. Again, that's going to require additional homework on your side. So these are the contracts that require the SUBK plan, contracting plan. So any contracts valued at over 750,000. And so we're going to see kind of what we saw on the civilian side with Justice and DHS posting the bigger numbers. VA has some there, and the VA, if you look at 2021, I'm guessing that's going to be medical supplies related to COVID. And yeah, DHS and Justice are really kind of your big players there. If you look at the totals, big spike in 2020, tapers off a little in 2021, big drop in 2022, but kind of back on the board in 2023 with still a couple months to go. Okay, on the defense side, this is going to more or less mirror what we saw earlier when we were just looking at the main contracts. So DLA obviously is where the propensity of their contracts tend to fall, not just in defense, but overall. And if you look at the totals, 2019 is where the largest opportunities were to subcontract. Slight drop in 2020, even a bigger drop then in 2021, a little bit of growth in 2022 for subcontracting, but looking fairly dismal there and dismal is relative, 3.2 million, that's still obviously a nice chunk of opportunity to subcontract, but based on their previous numbers, it's obviously a drop. Okay, on the independent agencies, just like we saw before, GSA is the bulk of where you're going to find the opportunities. If you look at the totals, the big year there was 2021, no surprise, and still looking, I'll say fairly steady. So if you took out the years that kind of threw things off with COVID, their numbers are, we'll say, more or less steady. And not just that slide, but some of the others. So, and most businesses either one big or companies lost. So just keep that in mind. And that's why we went back to fiscal year 19, just so we're not looking at some of these erratic numbers that were affected because of the companies, because of the impact of COVID on these companies. So when we look at the subcontracts awarded by EDS through the agencies, TLA, again, if you've been paying attention for the last, 30 minutes or so, this should not be a surprise to see DLA at the top. And then the others that we've mentioned going through GSA all the way down to Office of the Secretary of Defense, which is that last line there. And these are in billions. So some decent money has been won by ADS Tactical. Okay, and then if we look at the top 10 industry codes for the subcontracts, service equipment, and then if you kind of overlap this with the previous slide on DLA, you can probably guess that DLA is primarily buying service equipment as well as some of this miscellaneous manufacturing. And it would be interesting to look at the miscellaneous manufacturing because that is a very kind of general catch-all NAICS code. So I guess sometimes when products fall under that the contracting officer can't identify a specific NAICS code, it just kind of gets thrown into this miscellaneous category. But it's quite a decent size, decent dollar amount to throw under miscellaneous. So some further digging would be incumbent upon you if this is in fact a company that you want to work with and you've got some supplies, you're a manufacturer that wants to work with ADS. Now let's look at the actual subcontractors. So these are the companies that are getting the first tier piece of the subcontract, and sometimes there's companies even under them. Good competition here. It's, you know, obviously we've got TCI International, who's seems to be the biggest winner here for subcontracting with ADS. But then everything else behind that, the next, let's say 4, from Invistacom up through FCN, including L3 and Worldwide Tech, have decent dollars as well. But Lockheed, DRS, L3 again, Thales, the French defense contractor, and Safety and Security International seem to have a decent amount between them. So if you look at the bottom one, Safety and Security International up to Lockheed, they're all kind of within, I'm not gonna say a couple dollars of each other, a couple $1 million of each other. So there's nothing that's going to stop you from being a tier 2 or 3 subcontractor to any of these companies. But I like the looks of this slide, that there's not just 1 or 2 that are kind of running away with the prize. Well, TCI certainly is, but below that, some decent numbers that are spread across the board. Your top 5 subcontractors reported. And these companies are listed on that previous slide. And you can dig up this information and get more details in SAM.gov. The dollar amounts here are low to high. So the first row is, and these are the largest ones. These are just, this is not a comprehensive or complete list, but TCI obviously has the bottom 2 rows, of which are really the top 2 dollars for working with ADS. And all are falling under the same NAICS code, which is the 423850. And so again, just further sleuthing there on your side to find out what exactly they are providing. So the top 5 GWACs, your government-wide acquisition contracts, we've listed 4. So they obviously work with DLA. There's a special ops, the SLE TLSP program. OSD has the JE RDAP. DHS has their TACCOM contract, and then the Navy C2 MAC. So let's take a look at those numbers. So as we mentioned, DLA, again, is the bulk of where their business is. Pulling in 99% of their GWAC revenue for these, and then the JE RDAP, the TACCOM 2, and then the Navy C2. So the Navy C2 obviously just has a negative adjustment, so probably some returns or something along those lines. And we just went back 3 fiscal years here. Obviously, you can go back further if you, in fact, are on one of these contract vehicles as well, or are considering that. The contracts that are coming up that are expiring, that are valued at $750 and above, and we picked again $750 because that's the threshold for subcontracting. So they're listed here, and the my favorite columns here are going to be the total sales and then also the number of transactions. And interesting here that we've got some decent numbers that several of these have, you know, 1, 2, or 3 transactions, meaning that's just that was the amount of the purchase. Others have been broken down into 406 transactions, so more opportunity for purchases and kind of pieces of the puzzle. So keep those in mind. They've also got a GSA schedule, and you can kind of copy and paste those numbers. This is going to be the actually the last 3 rows appear to me to be GSA contract numbers, as well as row number 5 from the bottom. So the ones that start with GS and then the 47Q, the SPEs, I'm not sure, maybe those are the DHS contract vehicles. But again, copy and paste those into SAM, you'll get more details, and the details are going to give you more intelligence about the company and how to work with them, and if you want to work with them. So as we learned, the bulk of their work is obviously with the defense agencies, primarily DLA. They've got decent amount of business through contract vehicles, which is primarily how supplies are typically purchased just in general, whether it's ADS or another supplier of actual product versus services. Their civilian sales peaked in 21, and again, assuming that's probably because of COVID, but this is just an educated guess. And defense peaked in fiscal year 2022. Most of their employees tend to be former military, law enforcement, which I'm sure helps accelerate the sales process through relationships. And same thing with their board of advisors, primarily being former military folks. So spend some time on their website. They've got some good information there, a little bit about the history of the company and how the ADS piece of the company actually was formed. And yeah, spend some time to learn more about the company before you decide to dig in and work with them. Here's the list, just a snapshot from their website of who they work with. Again, a lot of what we covered are either, the top 5, the top 10. Doesn't mean that there's only, 5 NAICS codes that they sell under, or, that there's only 10 agencies that they're selling to. There's more than that. So do your homework, get educated before you decide to dig in and work with any of these companies. On their website, they've got listed as the #1 DLA supplier and the number 22 federal government contractor. The way that our list works, I think we're on 24 or 5 now. So the discrepancy there is we've gone back, I believe, 10 fiscal year averages. They're probably just pulling from the last fiscal year. And they've got themselves listed as the number 17 GSA contractor. And obviously you can just tell by everything that we covered that that's really where their focus is. Here's some headlines from the news, which you should also be subscribed to. So Google Alerts to find out more about what they are doing. Looks like they've won, this is fairly recent, this is a snapshot from the last week. They won a $38 million delivery order from DLA. And obviously you should be reading these articles. They're doing some work with the Air Force. And I think we did see some interesting numbers on the Air Force, which was, it seemed to be growing. So I'm not sure if that 150 then probably has, because we grabbed this headline last week, that 150 is probably not showing up in our slides because, again, that's typically delayed reporting. ADS, again, Atlantic Diving Supply. They've promoted Ryan Engel to CEO. That was the shot that we pulled from LinkedIn. So again, these are good conversation talking points as you're talking to the program managers, that that you're aware of. Hey, congratulations on your Air Force contract, and throw in some details like that. And it sounds like you have a new CEO. So be aware of the business and what's happening with them as much as you can. And it's so easy to do these days just by having a computer. So again, today's recording can be found on our YouTube channel. If you're looking for the PowerPoint, use the slideshare.net site. It's complimentary, free to access. Just log in with your LinkedIn credentials. You get all of our webinars. Next week, we're covering Bechtel. We'll go through this full list here every Wednesday at 12. If you're interested in being a sponsor for any of these, you can shoot us an email. But we will conclude on November 15th, which is a Wednesday, with GlaxoSmithKline. And that's all that we've got for today. So thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next week on Wednesday at 12 o'clock.